Hello, everyone. Here we are. We're going to get going with Genesis 32, which is Jacob preparing to meet Esau, who wanted to murder him 20 years before for stealing his birthright. First, I want to touch on three things. We're going to look at the spotted and speckled goats and sheep, the brown lambs that Jacob asked Laban for as his wages. And I'm going to explain this to you. First of all, when he asked Laban for this as a wage, Laban was happy because he felt he was going to make out like a bandit because there weren't that many. These were an aberration that were spotted, speckled, striped, had a little bit of white in them. He felt like, sure, I'll give you that. So Laban went through the flocks and separated all of those particular types of goats and lambs, and he gave them to his sons to get going on a journey towards where Jacob was going, to put 3 days distance between Jacob caring for Laban's flocks, which were all white, and the wages of Jacob that Laban had just parsed out to give him, okay, so that there'd be no mix-up in the flocks. These are yours, Jacob, and these are mine. And Jacob had promised to tend his white sheep for him. So he's going to do that. Meanwhile, his wage is with Laban's sons 3 days ahead on the journey, okay? The conjecture is that Jacob was trusting the Lord to propagate more of these striped and speckled goats and brown lambs for him, and certainly he was going to be breeding out of his own speckled flock. And, I don't know that he was thinking he would become wealthy, but it would be something for him to start with, okay? Because what he had said to Laban was, when do I get to do something for my own household? And this was his idea of how to be paid properly and to have something to work with, okay? Now, as far as putting the sticks, I think it was plane trees and poplar and something else that he was putting in the water troughs, okay. First of all, people used to laugh at this and say this is why the Bible isn't true, because it's a bunch of hogwash of spells and silly herbal remedies. No, actually, they found out that the trees that Jacob was taking sticks from, little small branches, and peeling them, putting them in the troughs was getting them to release what they had to offer in the way of herbal remedies that would cure quite a few things with sheep and goats, okay? So this was to make the animals very, very healthy so that they would breed, because that was his point, was he wanted a good flock, okay? So that's what all that means. Now, as far as the mandrake is, its root looks like the human form. It's always got 2 legs on it like a human being. It's a split root. It is used today. It's a toxin. It's part of the nightshade family. If you eat too many of the yellow berries or eat too many of the leaves or what have you, I don't know how they prepare it, but you can overdose on it, okay? It's not, it's something that's used in Western medicine now to cure rheumatoid arthritis or to help it. Ulcers, let me look here. I had a list. Stomach ulcers, colic, constipation, asthma, hay fever, convulsions, rheumatism, and whooping cough. Okay, so we still use it today, but in the Bible, it's mentioned in the Song of Solomon, which is a love poem of sorts. So when it says, come, I have the love apples, my mandrakes, that's basically saying, let's make love and conceive. And also we see Rachel asking for it because supposedly it helped her to conceive Joseph, okay? And then the third thing we wanted to talk about was Laban using divination to see that having Jacob work for him has prospered him mightily. Now, the common conjecture amongst scholars is simply that he was reading the signs, okay? Whether that was figurative or literal, we don't know. And it did bring up the Ummim and Thummim, which were the little black and white stones that the priests used to roll. And we're going to learn about that when we get into the days of Moses, okay? But in this instance, when he says, look, I have used divination to see that you have helped me to prosper, he could have been saying, I've divined that you have helped me to prosper, meaning I've seen the signs. I get it. Okay. So that's what that's all about. So let's get going to Genesis 32. And it says Jacob prepares to meet Esau, because you remember now he's got Laban's daughters, he's got his children, he's got everybody, he's got his flocks on ahead of him, and he's going to meet Esau after 20 years and see if everything is copacetic, okay? Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, this is the camp of God. So he named that place Mahanaim. Jacob sent messengers ahead of him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, S-E-I-R, the country of Edom, E-D-O-M. He instructed them, this is what you're to say to my lord Esau. Your servant Jacob says, I've been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkeys, sheep and goats, male and female servants. Now I'm sending this message to my lord that I may find favor in your eyes. When the messengers returned to Jacob, they said, we went to your brother Esau, and now he's coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. That must have been terrifying, huh? In great fear and distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought, if Esau comes and attacks one group, the group that's left may escape. Then Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, go back to your country and your relatives, and I'll make you prosper. I'm unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you've shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed the Jordan, but now I've become two camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I'm afraid he'll come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you've said I'll surely make you prosper and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted. He spent the night there, and from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 female camels with their young, 40 cows, 10 bulls, and 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. He put them in the care of his servants, each herd by itself, and said to his servants, go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds. He instructed the one in the lead, when my brother Esau meets you and asks, who do you belong to and where are you going and who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you're to say they belong to your servant Jacob. They're a gift sent to my lord Esau, and he's coming behind us. He also instructed the second, the third, and all the others who followed the herds. You're to say the same thing to Esau when you meet him. And be sure to say your servant Jacob is coming behind us, for he thought, I'll pacify him with these gifts I'm sending on ahead. Later when I see him, perhaps he'll receive me. So Jacob's gifts went on ahead of him, but he himself spent the night in the camp. That night Jacob got up and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 sons, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok, Jabbok. After he had sent them across the stream, he sent over all his possessions. So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he couldn't overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, let me go, for it is daybreak. Jacob replied, I will not let you go unless you bless me. He's wrestling with the very Lord, guys. The man asked him, what is your name? Jacob, he answered. Then the man said, your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you've struggled with God and with humans and have overcome. Jacob said, please tell me your name. But he replied, why do you ask my name? Then he blessed him there. In other words, you know who I am. I'm God. So Jacob called the place Peniel, Peniel, saying, "It's because I saw God face to face, and yet my life was spared." The sun rose above him as he passed Peniel, and he was limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the Israelites don't eat the tendon attached to the socket of the hip, because the socket of Jacob's hip was touched near the tendon. Boy, after you wrestle with God, you're certainly not going to be afraid of Esau, are you? Genesis 33. Jacob looked up, and there was Esau, coming with his 400 men. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the 2 female servants. That would be Bilhah and Zilpah. He put the female servants and their children in front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph in the rear. He himself went on ahead and bowed down to the ground 7 times as he approached his brother. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him, and they wept. Then Esau looked up and saw the women and children. "Who are these with you?" he asked. Jacob answered, "They're the children God has graciously given your servant." Then the female servants and their children approached and bowed down. Next, Leah and her children came and bowed down. Last of all came Joseph and Rachel, and they too bowed down. Esau asked, "What's the meaning of all these flocks and herds I met?" "To find favor in your eyes, my lord," he said. But Esau said, "I already have plenty, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." "No, please," said Jacob. If I've found favor in your eyes, accept this gift from me. For to see your face is like seeing the face of God now that you've received me favorably. Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God's been gracious to me, and I have all I need." And because Jacob insisted, Esau accepted it. Then Esau said, "Let us be on our way. I'll accompany you." But Jacob said to him, "My Lord knows that the children are tender and that I must care for the ewes and cows that are nursing their young. If they're driven hard just one day, all the animals will die. So let my Lord go on ahead of his servant while I move along slowly at the pace of the flocks and herds before me and the pace of the children until I come to my Lord in Seir." Esau said, "Then let me leave some of my men with you." "But why do that?" Jacob asked. "Just let me find favor in the eyes of my Lord." So that day Esau started on his way back to Seir. Jacob, however, went to Succoth, Sukkoth, where he built a place for himself and made shelters for his livestock. That's why the place is called Succoth, or Succoth, Sukkoth. After Jacob came from Paddan Aram, he arrived safely at the city of Shechem in Canaan and camped within sight of the city. For 100 pieces of silver, he bought from the sons of Hamor, the father of Shechem, the plot of ground where he pitched his tent. There he set up an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. Genesis 34. Now Dinah, the daughter that Leah had borne to Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. When Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, he took her and raped her. His heart was drawn to Dinah, daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. And Shechem said to his father Hamor, "Get me this girl as my wife." When Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been defiled, his sons were in the fields with his livestock, so he did nothing about it until they came home. Then Shechem's father Hamor went out to talk with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the fields as soon as they heard what had happened. They were shocked and furious because Shechem had done an outrageous thing in Israel by sleeping with Jacob's daughter, a thing that should not be done. But Hamor said to them, "My son Shechem has his heart set on your daughter. Please give her to him as his wife. Intermarry with us. Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. You can settle among us. The land is open to you. Live in it, trade in it, and acquire property in it." Then Shechem said to Dinah's father and brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and I'll give you whatever you ask. Make the price for the bride and the gift I am to bring as great as you like, and I'll pay whatever you ask me. Only give me the young woman as my wife." Because their sister Dinah had been defiled, Jacob's sons replied deceitfully as they spoke to Shechem and his father Hamor. They said to them, "We can't do such a thing. We can't give our sister to a man who's not circumcised. That would be a disgrace to us. We'll enter into an agreement with you on one condition only, that you become like us by circumcising all your males. Then we'll give you our daughters and take your daughters for ourselves. We'll settle among you and become one people with you. But if you won't agree to be circumcised, we'll take our sister and go." Their proposal seemed good to Hamor and his son Shechem. The young man, who was most honored of all his father's family, lost no time in doing what they said because he was delighted with Jacob's daughter. So Hamor and his son Shechem went to the gate of their city to speak to the men of their city. "These men are friendly towards us," they said. "Let them live in our land and trade in it. The land has plenty of room for them. We can marry their daughters and they can marry ours. But the men will agree to live with us as one people only on the condition that our males be circumcised, as they themselves are. Won't their livestock, their property, and all their other animals become ours? So let us agree to their terms, and they'll settle among us." All the men who went out to the city gate agreed with Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male in the city was circumcised. 3 days later, while all of them were still in pain, 2 of Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and attacked the unsuspecting city, killing every male. They put Hamor and his son Shechem to the sword and took Dinah from Shechem's house and left. The sons of Jacob came upon the dead bodies and looted the city where their sister had been defiled. They seized their flocks and herds and donkeys and everything else of theirs in the city and out in the fields. They carried off their wealth and all their women and children, taking as plunder everything in the houses. Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You've brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We're few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." But they replied, should he have treated our sister like a prostitute? Okay, we're going to do one more. We're going to do Genesis 35. Then God said to Jacob, "Go up to Bethel and settle there, and build an altar there to God who appeared to you when you were fleeing from your brother Esau." So Jacob said to his household and all who were with him, "Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you, the terebinth, and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I'll build an altar to God who answered me in the day of my distress, and who has been with me wherever I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods they had and the rings in their ears, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. Then they set out, and the terror of God fell on the towns all around them, so that no one pursued them. Jacob and all the people with him came to Luz, that is Bethel, and Luz is L-U-Z, in the land of Canaan. There he built an altar, and he called the place El Bethel, because it was there that God revealed himself to him when he was fleeing from his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died and was buried under the oak outside Bethel, so it was named Allon Bakuth. After Jacob returned from Paddan Aram, God appeared to him again and blessed him. God said to him, "Your name is Jacob, but you'll no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel." So he named him Israel. And God said to him, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I also give to you, and I'll give this land to your descendants after you." Then God went up from him at the place where he had talked with him. Jacob set up a stone pillar at the place where God had talked to him, and he poured out a drink offering on it. He also poured oil on it. Jacob called the place where God had talked with him Bethel. Then they moved on from Bethel. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. And as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't despair, for you have another son." As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem. Over her tomb, Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day, that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. Israel moved on again and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. Jacob had 12 sons, the sons of Leah: Reuben, the firstborn of Jacob; Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun; the sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin; the sons of Rachel's servant Bilhah, Dan and Naphtali; the sons of Leah's servant Zilpah, Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Jacob came home to his father Isaac in Mamre near Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had stayed. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Okay, I love you very much. Stay in prayer. The world is reeling and roiling on its axis like a drunken man, as it says in Isaiah 24. I love you, and I'll see you tomorrow, and we'll pick it up at Genesis 36. God bless you. Good night.